The door to my luxurious beach house swung open, revealing two faces I hadn't seen in 12 long years. Nyomi, my daughter, and Malik, her husband, stood there, their smiles strained, their eyes betraying a desperation they tried hard to conceal. Their gazes darted around the interior of my new home, taking in the Italian leather furniture, the 70-inch television, the breathtaking panoramic ocean view that stretched behind me like a vibrant, living masterpiece of freedom. "Mom," Nyomi murmured, her voice trembling slightly, "we need to talk to you." For 12 years these two individuals had effectively erased me from their lives, as if I had never existed. 12 years without a phone call, without a Christmas invitation, without ever meeting my own grandchildren. And now, after I'd purchased this multi-million-dollar house outright, they appeared on my doorstep like specters from the past, drawn back only by the scent of money. I observed them silently, meticulously noting every detail of their worn appearance. Malik attempted to peer over my shoulder, seeking a more comprehensive view of my seaside sanctuary. Nyomi wore a faded green dress that had seen better days, and her synthetic leather shoes displayed cracks hinting at significant financial hardship. Deep worry lines etched her forehead like furrows in parched earth, and her hands trembled slightly as she waited for my response. "Talk," I repeated, my calmness surprising even myself. "How interesting. After 12 years of absolute silence, now you want to talk." The color drained from their faces as if the truth itself had risen like a ghost to haunt them. Malik cleared his throat nervously, adjusting the wrinkled shirt he wore. It was evident they'd arrived directly from somewhere things hadn't gone as planned. Their eyes couldn't mask the desperation that had driven them to my doorstep. During those years of cruel abandonment, I'd survived by selling my homemade pies and desserts at the town's farmers market. Every Sunday, while they were likely enjoying lavish family gatherings at expensive restaurants, I stood under the relentless sun, smiling at strangers who appreciated my baking far more than my own blood relatives did. My hands had grown rough from the constant work. My back had stooped from carrying heavy baskets brimming with sweet hopes, yet my pride never completely shattered. The aroma of freshly baked goods remains one of my most cherished memories. Finely ground cinnamon, pure vanilla extract, toasted coconut brown to perfection flavors that once filled my home when Nyomi was a little girl, and she called me the best cook in the world. Those golden days felt like a lifetime ago, a memory belonging to a different woman, one who naively believed that family love was unconditional and everlasting. The transformation began subtly after Nyomi met Malik at a company party where she worked as a secretary. Initially, he was all charm and calculated politeness. He'd call me his dear mother-in-law, his smile never quite reaching his eyes, praising my Christmas casseroles while secretly plotting to distance Nyomi from my influence. But gradually, I began to notice the insidious changes seeping into our relationship like a slow poison. When Nyomi mentioned visiting me on weekends, he always had a work emergency demanding his immediate attention. When I called in the afternoons to hear her voice, he would answer, his tone annoyed, promising Nyomi would call back. A promise never kept. Messages were mysteriously lost, invitations misplaced, plans canceled at the last minute for increasingly improbable reasons. The exclusions started as seemingly accidental oversights, painful but forgivable. Nyomi's MBA graduation. "Oh, Mom," they said. "We thought you already had other, more important plans." Her first daughter's baby shower, my granddaughter whom I never met. It was something very intimate, just her closest college friends. The same granddaughter's first communion. "We completely forgot to tell you. Everything was so rushed. You know how these things are." Each excuse felt like a dagger, wrapped in beautifully gift-wrapped paper with golden bows. I'd smile, nod, and pretend to understand perfectly. "Don't worry, my love. Next time will be different." But next time never came, and my phone remained as silent as the tomb where my husband lay. The nights grew longer, the Sundays emptier. I cooked for one, talked to the photographs on the walls, and celebrated my birthdays with a single lonely candle and a small cake from Mr. King's bakery. He always asked about Nyomi, and I always responded with the same lie. "She's very busy with her new life. You know how it is." But now, standing on the threshold of my dream house, with the ocean whispering secrets behind me and the salty air filling my lungs, I saw them for who they truly were. I invited them in with an elegant wave of my hand, watching their eyes widen at the sight of the luxury now surrounding them. The Italian marble floor gleamed under the natural light streaming through the enormous windows, reflecting their small, nervous figures. Nyomi trailed behind Malik like a shadow, her head down, while he appraised every piece of furniture, every work of art, every detail of my new reality with the barely concealed greed of a professional appraiser. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the cream-colored leather sofa that had cost more than they'd seen together in years. "I suppose after all this time you have a lot to tell me." Malik cleared his throat, assuming that important man posture he always adopted when trying to impress someone. "Zariah, we know it's been a few years since we've spoken, but—" "12 years," I interrupted firmly. "Not a few years. 12 exact years since you decided I didn't exist." Nyomi finally looked up, tears welling in her eyes, but they no longer moved me as they once had. I'd cried too many lonely nights to let her carefully calculated tears manipulate me now. "Mom, it wasn't our intention. Things got complicated. Malik's job. The kids. The kids I never met," I replied, feeling the years of pent-up rage begin to boil within me. My grandchildren, who grew up without knowing they had a grandmother who would have loved them unconditionally. During those 12 years of forced exile, I'd built a routine that kept me sane. Every morning I rose at 5, preparing my desserts with the same dedication I once poured into caring for Nyomi as a baby. The pie crust demanded patience, the caramel required constant attention, the baking time didn't forgive mistakes. Those recipes had become my salvation and my livelihood. Sundays at the farmer's market provided my social interaction. Older women like me would buy my sweets, and we'd talk about our lives, our absent children, our postponed dreams. Aunt Celine, a 72-year-old widow, became my confidant without any planning. She, too, had been abandoned by her children after they married. She, too, knew the pain of being invisible to those who were once the center of your universe. Children think that once they form their own family, we parents no longer matter, Aunt Celine would say as she bought 3 pies to take to her neighbors. But when they need something, oh, then they remember we exist. How prophetic that conversation had been. Now, watching Nyomi wring her hands nervously while Malik mentally calculated the value of my new life, I understood perfectly what Aunt Celine had meant. The change in Nyomi had been gradual but relentless. During the first few years of her marriage, she still called occasionally, but the conversations grew stilted, filled with awkward silences. Malik was always in the background, clearing his throat or making cutting comments that sliced through our conversations like sharp blades. "Your mom always has some drama," I once overheard him say when Nyomi thought she'd hung up the phone. "My mother never bothers us with her personal problems." Asterisk her personal problems. Asterisk that's how Malik classified my loneliness, my natural desire to maintain contact with my only daughter, my need to be a part of her new family. Everything I felt and needed had been reduced to personal problems, disrupting their perfect married life. The family invitations dwindled until they vanished completely. First Thanksgiving dinner. "This year will be something small, Mom. Just the 4 of us." Then Christmas. "The kids are sick. We'd better postpone it." Then birthdays. Everything got complicated with Malik's work. Each excuse came with empty promises of a next time that never materialized. Nyomi developed a special talent for making every rejection sound reasonable, every exclusion temporary, every abandonment for my own good. "We don't want you to feel obligated to come, Mom. You're old enough to rest and enjoy your peace and quiet." My peace and quiet. As if loneliness were a gift I'd requested. As if waking up every morning in a silent apartment was my idea of happiness. As if cooking for one and eating in front of the television was my definition of a fulfilling life. The years passed like unread pages of a calendar. My routine became so predictable that even the mailman knew exactly when I'd be watering the plants on my small balcony. Monday, apple pies. Tuesday, Jell-O salads of various flavors. Wednesday, chocolate fudge cakes that sold like hotcakes. Thursday, muffins that perfumed my entire apartment. Friday, pumpkin spice turnovers. Saturday, preparations for market day. Sunday, the market, the ladies, the conversations that temporarily filled the void in my chest. But there were also moments of such profound loneliness that I thought I would drown in it. Entire nights spent awake, staring at the silent phone, waiting for a text that never arrived. Christmases celebrated with television specials, and a small artificial tree I decorated myself. New Year's Eves welcomed with a glass of lukewarm sparkling wine and the renewed hope that maybe, just maybe, this would be the year of reunion. The sharpest pain came unexpectedly. Seeing whole families at the park, hearing other grandmothers talk about their grandchildren, passing toy stores and wondering what mine would have liked. Nyomi had 3 children, whom I knew only from blurry social media photos I'd surreptitiously viewed from fake accounts, like a spy on my own family. Mom, Nyomi's voice pulled me back to the present. We know we made mistakes. Mistakes? The word left my mouth like a bullet. Erasing your mother from your life for 12 years was a mistake. Denying your children the love of their grandmother was a mistake. Malik shifted uncomfortably, finally realizing this conversation wasn't going as he'd planned. His eyes continued to scan my living room, calculating, evaluating, plotting his next move like the expert manipulator he'd always been. They weren't mistakes, I continued, the truth flowing from my throat like hot lava after years of containment. They were conscious, calculated, cruel decisions. You chose to erase me from your lives as if I were an old piece of furniture no longer useful to you. Nyomi began to sob, but her tears no longer had the power to disarm me. I'd cried alone for too many nights, wondering what I'd done wrong, how I'd failed as a mother, why my unconditional love hadn't been enough to hold my family together. Mom, please let us explain, Nyomi pleaded between sobs. Explain what? My voice rose uncontrollably. Are you going to explain why I didn't know my granddaughter when she took her first steps? Why I wasn't there when my grandson lost his first tooth? Why I spent 12 Christmases cooking for no one while you built family memories without me? Malik finally spoke, using that condescending tone he'd perfected over the years. Zariah, we understand you feel hurt, but families sometimes need space to grow. It was nothing personal against you. The laugh that escaped me was so bitter. Even I was surprised. Nothing personal, Malik? You turned my daughter into a stranger. You planted poison in her heart against me. You decided I had no place in the life you were building. I remembered with painful clarity the day Nyomi communicated her final decision. It was a rainy Tuesday in October exactly 12 years ago. She arrived at my apartment with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, distant, as if fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. Mom, Malik and I have been talking, she began, not even accepting the coffee I'd prepared for her. We think it's better if you have less contact with us for a while. Less contact? I asked, feeling the world tilt beneath my feet. What does that mean? It means you're no longer welcome in our house. It means we no longer want you to call constantly. It means we need space to be a family without external interference. External interference. That's what my own daughter had called me. As if I were a meddling neighbor, a stranger interfering in matters that didn't concern her. Not her mother, who had carried her for 9 months, who'd spent sleepless nights tending to her fevers, who'd worked double shifts to pay for her college. Nyomi, I don't understand what I've done wrong, how I've failed you. My voice broke, but she remained impassive. It's not about what you've done wrong, Mom. It's about what's best for my marriage and my children. Malik needs to know that I put our nuclear family first before anyone else. Anyone else? That's what I was to my daughter. Anyone else? But Nyomi, I'm your mother. I'm your children's grandmother. I'm not a stranger who threatens your marriage. Malik says that mothers-in-law always cause problems in young marriages. He says it's better to establish clear boundaries from the beginning. Malik thinks Malik needs. At some point, my daughter's voice had become an echo of his. Her thoughts replaced by his. her heart reprogrammed to beat to the rhythm he set. And what about what you say, Nyomi? What about what you think? What about your heart? She remained silent for long minutes, and for a moment, I thought the daughter I'd raised with so much love would return. But when she spoke, her voice sounded hollow, rehearsed, as if reciting lines from a play. I think Malik is right. I think it's for the best for everyone, including you, Mom. You can have your own life without worrying about us. That was our last real conversation. After that day, Nyomi became a ghost, occasionally sending cold, superficial text messages. Hope you're well, Mom. Happy birthday. Happy New Year. Automatic messages devoid of soul, devoid of love, like those a company sends to its customers. The first few months after that break were the darkest of my life. I lost weight, sleep, hope. Every morning I woke hoping it was a nightmare, that Nyomi would call to apologize, that everything would return to normal. But the phone remained silent, and reality grew heavier each day. It was Aunt Zola who saved me from sinking into complete depression. She appeared at my door one Sunday morning, finding me in bed for 3 days, unwashed, eating only saltine crackers and iced tea. Zariah, get up. You have 2 choices. You can stay here dying in life for a daughter who doesn't deserve you, or you can build a new life worthy of you. Her words were harsh but truthful. That afternoon, she helped me clean my apartment, organize my recipes, and plan my new dessert business. If you're going to suffer, she said as we mixed the first batch of pie filling in months, do it while you're doing something productive. And so my new life began, slowly, painfully, but with determination. Every pie I sold was a step toward emotional independence. Every satisfied customer, a small personal victory. Every dollar earned, proof that I had value, even if my own daughter didn't see it. Sundays at the market became my weekly therapy. The ladies who bought my desserts became my new chosen family. We shared stories of ungrateful children, of marriages that divided families, of the loneliness of being a mother in a society that discards you when you're no longer useful. My son tells me I'm too dramatic when I complain that he doesn't visit. A lady named Joanna told me while sampling my mango jello. But it's not drama. It's real pain. It's the basic human need to feel loved and valued by those you brought into the world. Now, sitting in my living room, which cost more than everything Nyomi and Malik owned combined, I remembered every tear, every sleepless night, every lonely birthday, and I saw them there, small and desperate, seeking something from me after turning their backs for over a decade. So, after 12 years of silence, I said in a controlled voice, "What exactly brings you to my door?" Malik and Nyomi exchanged a meaningful look. Finally, he cleared his throat again. "Zariah, the truth is we're going through a very difficult time." "A very difficult time," I repeated slowly, savoring the irony like bitter honey. "What an extraordinary coincidence that you come looking for me just when you have problems, after 12 years of considering my existence irrelevant to your perfect lives." Malik shifted uncomfortably on the sofa, clearly preparing a rehearsed speech. His eyes avoided mine as he formulated the words he thought would soften my heart. "The construction company went bankrupt 6 months ago," he finally confessed. "We lost all our savings. The house is in foreclosure. Nyomi had to quit her job to take care of the kids because we can't afford daycare. We're living with my parents, but they have financial problems too." Nyomi nodded desperately, as if confirming their misfortune would automatically generate my compassion. "Mom, the kids ask why they don't have their own room, why Dad is always angry, why Mom cries at night. We don't know what to do." "Ah," I said, leaning back in my Italian leather armchair. "So now I'm useful. Now I exist. Now I'm part of the family. How convenient." During those 12 years of ostracism, I developed a special ability to read between the lines, to detect emotional manipulation, to protect myself from people who only approached when they needed something. The ladies at the market had taught me that children often return to their parents when life hits them, not out of genuine love, but out of pure convenience. "It's not like that, Mom," Nyomi protested, her voice breaking. "We've always loved you. I've always thought of you. It was just that the circumstances." "The circumstances?" I interrupted with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Let's talk about circumstances, Nyomi. When your first son had pneumonia 8 years ago and was hospitalized for a week, where was I? When your second son broke his arm playing soccer 5 years ago, did you call me? When your youngest daughter had problems at school last year, did you think to ask her grandmother for advice? Each question was an arrow aimed at the center of her guilt. Nyomi winced with each one because she knew the answer was the same. She hadn't thought of me during any difficult moments in their lives. Only now, when they needed money, when their world was crumbling financially, had they remembered they had a mother. We knew you had financial problems, Malik muttered, trying to justify the unjustifiable. We didn't want to be a burden to you when you could barely support yourself selling desserts. The audacity of his comment left me speechless for a moment. Not only had they justified my exclusion because of my poverty, but now they had the nerve to admit it openly, as if it were a valid reason to abandon a loved one. I see, I said with a calmness that surprised me. So, I wasn't good enough for you when I was poor, but now that you know about my new financial situation, I'm suddenly valuable enough to receive a visit. The truth about my economic transformation was something they couldn't have imagined. 3 months ago, while preparing pies for the Sunday market, I received a call that changed my destiny forever. It was a lawyer from the city informing me of the death of my Aunt Zola, my late father's sister, who had lived in the United States for 50 years without our family knowing much about her. Aunt Zola had been the black sheep of the family, the one who left young in search of the American dream and never returned. For decades we only received occasional Christmas postcards, but we never really knew how she'd fared. It turned out she'd done extraordinarily well. The inheritance included a house in Los Angeles that sold for $1.5 million, bank accounts with another $500,000, and several investments totaling another $2 million. Overnight, I went from counting pennies to buy ingredients for my desserts to having more money than I'd ever dreamed of. But the most important thing about that inheritance wasn't the money. It was the letter Aunt Zola had left specifically for me. In that letter, she told me how she'd followed my life through social media, how she'd seen my loneliness, my family's abandonment, my daily struggle to survive. She explained that she decided to leave me everything because she recognized in me the same strong woman she had been. Someone who had been underestimated and abandoned by her family, but who had never given up. Zariah, the letter said in the shaky handwriting of a 92-year-old woman, I have seen how your daughter has treated you. I have seen your dignity and your loneliness. This money is for you to live your final years as the queen you always were, not as the beggar they wanted you to be. With that inheritance, I bought this house by the sea, a place where I could wake up every morning listening to the waves and breathing fresh air, free from painful memories and toxic people. For the first time in 12 years, I slept in complete peace. Mom, Nyomi tried to approach me, but I raised my hand to stop her. We know we made terrible mistakes. We know we hurt you in unforgivable ways, but we're family. Blood. Blood. I interrupted with a bitter laugh. Nyomi, blood means nothing without respect, without love, without consideration. You turned our family connection into a wet piece of paper that you threw in the trash when it no longer suited you. Malik leaned forward, adopting a posture of calculated vulnerability he'd likely practiced in front of a mirror. Zariah, we understand your pain. We understand your anger, but the children are innocent in all of this. They don't deserve to suffer because of our mistakes. Their presence, my unknown grandchildren, was their most potent weapon. A calculated emotional manipulation. They knew mentioning the children would soften my heart, hardened by years of their neglect. The children? I asked, a mixture of pain and rage churning within me. The same children who had grown up unaware of a grandmother who would have loved them unconditionally. The same children denied the love, wisdom, and care of their grandmother for all these years. Nyomi began to sob again, but this time her tears seemed genuine, heavy with the weight of real guilt. Mom, we didn't think about the long-term consequences. Malik said it was better for the marriage, that mothers-in-law always caused problems. Malik said. I repeated. looking directly at the man who had orchestrated the destruction of my relationship with my daughter. And where was your own voice, Nyomi? Where was your own heart? My voice got lost somewhere between the promises of a perfect marriage and the fear of contradicting my husband, Nyomi admitted, an honesty that momentarily disarmed me. But Mom, now I realize everything we lost. The kids ask why they don't have a grandmother because their friends talk about their grandmothers and they don't know any. Her words were daggers piercing my heart and twisting deeper, leaving scars no apology could ever heal. But I had learned not to let pain cloud my judgment. For 12 years I had fantasized about this moment. Nyomi's return, the acknowledgement of her mistake, the chance to meet my grandchildren. But now that it was happening, I realized it was far too late, and for all the wrong reasons. Do you know how many of my grandchildren's birthdays I missed, while you were building your perfect family without external interference? I asked, my voice hardening with each word. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake imagining what their voices, their laughs, their personalities would be like? Do you know how many toys I bought and stored in a box waiting for a day that never came? Malik shifted nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. His plan of emotional softening wasn't working as he'd hoped, and I could see him mentally calculating his next manipulative move. Zariah, we understand you're hurt, he intervened, using that condescending tone he'd perfected over the years. But now we can change all that. The children can meet you. They can spend time with you. We can be a family again. A family? I repeated, savoring the irony of his words. You mean the kind of family where the grandmother is welcome only when she has money to solve the problems of irresponsible adults? A tense silence filled the house. Through the large windows I could see the ocean waves breaking against the rocks, a constant reminder of my newfound freedom and hard-won independence. This place represented everything I had achieved without them, everything I had built from the ashes of my abandonment. During these 3 months living by the sea, I had developed a completely new routine. I woke up each morning to the sound of seagulls, not to the silent cry of loneliness. I prepared my coffee in a kitchen equipped with the best appliances, not in the small space where I used to count every penny for basic ingredients. I walked along the beach at sunset, feeling the sand between my toes and the salty wind in my hair, free from the emotional heaviness I had carried for years. I had also started helping other older women who, like me, had been abandoned by their families. Aunt Zola had moved into an apartment near my house, and together we had created a small support group for ladies in similar situations. On Wednesday afternoons we would gather in my living room to share stories, emotional survival strategies, and of course my homemade desserts. Freedom, Aunt Zola had told me during one of those meetings, is realizing that you don't need the approval of those who hurt you to be happy. Her words resonated in my heart like a bell of truth. For the first time in decades I was living for myself. Not waiting for calls that never came. Not cooking for children who didn't visit. Not dreaming of family reunions that existed only in my imagination. Mom! Nyomi approached the edge of my armchair, her eyes red from crying. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I swear on my children that if you help us now, things will be different. I will be different. Different how? I asked, keeping my voice cold and controlled. Different until you solve your financial problems and don't need me anymore. Different until Malik decides again that I'm an interference in his perfect marriage. Malik stood up abruptly, finally revealing his true nature when he realized his manipulative strategy wasn't working. Look, Zariah, I understand you have resentments, but the reality is that we all make mistakes in families. The important thing is to move on, not to get stuck in the past. His comment felt like a slap in the face. After 12 years of deliberate abandonment, he had the audacity to minimize my pain as being stuck in the past, as if my suffering were a whimsical choice rather than a direct consequence of their cruel actions. Move on. I stood up from my armchair, feeling all my dignity rise like a steel tower. Malik, I have already moved on. I built a new life without you. I found peace without your presence. I discovered my worth without your validation. Nyomi covered her face with her hands, sobbing with a desperation that would have broken my heart years ago. But the heart they had known had died slowly over 12 years of indifference, and had been reborn as something stronger, wiser, more selective with its love. You don't understand, do you? I continued, walking toward the window overlooking the ocean. You came here expecting to find the same broken woman you abandoned 12 years ago. You expected to find someone so desperate for family love that she would be willing to pay any price for a few crumbs of affection. The truth was that during the first few years after their abandonment, I would indeed have been willing to pay any price. I would have mortgaged my soul for a phone call from Nyomi. I would have sold everything I owned for an afternoon with my grandchildren. I would have begged for forgiveness for offenses I never committed just to be part of their lives again. But time and pain had taught me valuable lessons about self-love and personal dignity. The afternoons with Aunt Zola and the other ladies had shown me that family abandonment was more common than I thought, and that surviving it was not only possible, but could be the beginning of a more authentic and satisfying life. For years I blamed myself, I confessed, still looking out at the ocean. I thought I had failed as a mother, that I had been too meddlesome, too present, too loving. I tortured myself looking for the exact moment I lost my daughter. I turned to face them directly, and I could see how my words were affecting them in different ways. Nyomi seemed genuinely devastated, as if she were finally understanding the magnitude of the damage they had caused. Malik, on the other hand, showed signs of impatience and frustration, clearly calculating whether it was worth continuing with this strategy or if he should try a different approach. But eventually I understood the truth. I continued. I didn't lose my daughter because of something I did wrong. I lost her because she chose a man who considered having a present mother-in-law a threat to his fragile masculinity. I lost her because she valued her husband's approval more than her mother's love. Nyomi stood up, swaying as if my words were physical blows. Mom, it's not like that. I never stopped loving you. I just got confused. Malik made me believe it was for the best for everyone. Malik manipulated you. I corrected her. But you allowed him to do it. You chose to believe his lies because they were more comfortable than defending your mother. You preferred the artificial peace of a controlling marriage over the discomfort of setting healthy boundaries with your husband. The silence that followed my words was deafening. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the distant sound of the waves, Nyomi's agitated breathing. Malik had adopted that rigid posture he used when he felt cornered, preparing to counterattack or to retreat strategically. So what do you want from us? Malik finally asked, abandoning any pretense of remorse or vulnerability. Do you want us to grovel? Do you want to humiliate us as revenge for the past? His question revealed exactly what I had expected from him. It wasn't about repairing emotional damage or rebuilding family relationships. It was a transaction, a negotiation where he expected to pay the minimum price necessary to obtain the maximum financial benefit. I don't want your humiliation, Malik, I replied with a serenity that surprised me. What I want is something you probably can't give. Genuine respect, unconditional love, and the acknowledgement that you spent 12 years treating me like I was garbage. Nyomi rose from the sofa with trembling movements, approaching me with her hands extended as if she wanted to touch me, but didn't dare. Mom, I can give you that. I do recognize all the harm we did to you. I've spent these last few months awake at night, remembering every cruel moment, every call I didn't return, every invitation I never sent. These last few months, I interrupted, noticing the specificity of her confession. What happened exactly 3 months ago that made you remember you had an abandoned mother? The color drained from her face as if she had been caught in a lie. Malik shot her a warning look, but it was too late. I had detected the inconsistency in her story of spontaneous repentance. Nyomi stammered, desperately searching for the right words. You found out about my inheritance. I completed the sentence for her, feeling all the pieces of the puzzle fall perfectly into place. Someone told you about my new house, about my new financial situation. That's why you're here. Not for love, not for genuine remorse, but because you discovered that the mother you abandoned now has money. Malik tried to take control of the situation again, but his mask of vulnerability had cracked completely. Zariah, that's not true. Of course, we heard about your good fortune, and we're glad to know you're well, but we came. Why did you come? I interrupted with a coldness that cut like a blade. Because you're broke. You came because you desperately need money and I am your last resort. You came because you calculated that 12 years of abandonment could be forgiven with a few well-acted tears and empty promises of reconciliation. The truth about how they had found out about my new situation had come to me the week before through Aunt Zola. Her niece worked at the bank where my inheritance transfer had been handled and had overheard conversations about the lady who sold pies and now had millions of dollars. Gossip travels fast in small towns, especially when it involves such dramatic economic transformations. It was Mr. King from the bakery who told half the town, Aunt Zola had explained during one of our coffee afternoons. He says Nyomi and Malik have been asking around about you, wanting to know if it's true you got rich overnight. That information had been like a vaccine against any romantic hope I might have harbored for a genuine reunion. When I saw them appear at my door, I already knew exactly why they were there, and what they wanted from me. Mom, yes, we found out about your inheritance. Nyomi finally admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. But that doesn't mean we're here just for the money. We're here because we realized we made the biggest mistake of our lives. You realize now? I asked, walking to the kitchen and pouring myself a glass of cool water. You didn't realize during the 12 years I spent crying over your absence. You didn't realize when I spent 3 consecutive Christmases in the hospital with pneumonia, because loneliness had weakened my immune system. You didn't realize when I had to sell my wedding jewelry to pay for medication. Each revelation was a bomb that exploded in the tense silence of my living room. Nyomi knew nothing about my illnesses, my financial crisis, the nights I had considered it would be easier to simply not wake up the next day. To her, I had existed in a time bubble, frozen at the moment of her departure, patiently awaiting her eventual return. We didn't know, Nyomi murmured. But her excuse sounded hollow even to herself. You didn't know because you never asked, I corrected her. For 12 years you could have picked up the phone just once to find out how your mother was. You could have sent a text message asking if I needed anything. You could have stopped by my apartment to check if I was still alive. Malik stood up abruptly, clearly frustrated that his plan of emotional manipulation was not yielding the expected results. All right, Zariah, we get it. You're angry. But we're here now. We're here asking for forgiveness, wanting to fix things. Doesn't that count for something? His question revealed the depth of his misunderstanding of the damage they had caused. For him, forgiveness was something that could be obtained by simply showing up and apologizing. As if 12 years of emotional abandonment could be erased with one uncomfortable conversation. What counts, Malik, is the moment you decided to come. You didn't come when I needed you. You came when you need me. I walked over to the window overlooking the backyard where I had planted red roses that were blooming beautifully under the coastal sun. Those roses represented my rebirth, my ability to create beauty even after being cruelly pruned by those who were supposed to care for me. For all these years, I continued without turning to look at them. I developed a very simple philosophy about human relationships. People show you who they really are through their actions, not their words. You showed me that I had no value in your lives when things were going well. Nyomi came up behind me and I could feel her trembling presence near my shoulder. Mom, we were young, stupid, influenced by wrong ideas about marriage and family. But we've grown up. We've matured. You've gone broke. I corrected her without turning around. You haven't matured. You've gone broke, and now that you need financial help, you suddenly remember you have a mother. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of my phone. It was Aunt Zola, probably calling for our weekly gardening session. I let it go to voicemail, but her call reminded me of something important. I had a full and satisfying life without them. I had genuine friendships, purpose, peace of mind. I didn't need validation from people who had treated me like a disposable object. Do you know what the most painful moment of all these years was? I asked, finally turning to face them. It wasn't when you stopped inviting me to celebrations. It wasn't when you stopped calling. It was when I realized that I loved you unconditionally. But your love for me had conditions that you never clearly explained. Nyomi began to sob again. But this time her tears seemed to come from a deeper, more genuine place. Mom, I love you. I've always loved you. It's just that I let others convince me that that love was problematic for my marriage. And now that your marriage is in a financial crisis, I observed, suddenly that love is no longer problematic. How convenient. Malik had remained silent for the last few minutes, but I could see his mind working, calculating, evaluating, looking for a new angle of attack. He finally spoke, adopting a different tone, more direct and less manipulative. Look, Zariah, let's be honest here. We need financial help. You have money. We're family, even if we've had problems in the past. Isn't it natural for family to help each other in difficult times? His brutal honesty was almost refreshing after so much poorly acted emotional manipulation. At least now we were speaking clearly about what they really wanted from me. It's interesting that you mentioned the concept of family helping each other. I replied with a smile that was anything but warm. Where was that family philosophy when I was working 14-hour days selling desserts to survive? Where was that family solidarity when I had to choose between buying medicine or food? Do you know what's the most pathetic thing about all this? I continued, feeling years of contained pain transform into a crystalline clarity that cut like a scalpel. That if you had come a year ago when I was still living in that tiny apartment, when I was still counting coins to buy ingredients, I probably would have welcomed you with open arms. I would have cried with joy. I would have forgiven everything without conditions. I would have cooked for you until I dropped from exhaustion. Nyomi covered her face with her hands, her sobs now accompanied by a body tremor that showed the magnitude of her desperation. Malik, on the other hand, had adopted a more tense posture, like a cornered animal evaluating its escape options. But the money gave me something I never had during those 12 years of abandonment. I went on, walking slowly through my living room like a judge delivering a sentence. It gave me perspective. It gave me the freedom to choose who deserves to be in my life and who doesn't. It gave me the power to say no without fear of the consequences. During my first few weeks living in this house, I had spent many hours reflecting on this exact possibility. What would I do if Nyomi and Malik appeared at my door? How would I react? Would I be able to maintain my dignity, or would I crumble at the first opportunity to get my daughter back? Aunt Zola had been my counselor during those deep reflections. Money doesn't change who you are on the inside, she had told me as we drank tea on my new terrace. But it does change how others see you and how you see yourself. The question is, are you going to use that new perspective to be wiser, or to make the same emotional mistakes of the past? Her words had been prophetic. Now facing the exact scenario we had discussed, I realized that the money had indeed changed me, but not in the way Nyomi and Malik expected. It hadn't made me more generous with those who had hurt me. It had made me more selective with who deserved my time and my emotional energy. Mom, Nyomi tried to approach me again. I understand your anger. I understand your pain. But don't you think everyone deserves a second chance? Don't you think family love can overcome any past mistake? A second chance? I repeated, savoring the irony of her words. Nyomi, you had thousands of opportunities over 12 years to rectify your mistake. Every day you woke up was an opportunity to call your mother. Every birthday, every Christmas, every Mother's Day was an opportunity to remember that you had a family that loved you unconditionally. Malik shifted restlessly, clearly calculating whether he should intervene or let Nyomi continue with her strategy of emotional appeal. His eyes continued to scan my house, evaluating, calculating, probably estimating how much money he might need to solve his problems and how much they could ask me for without seeming too greedy. The difference between a second chance and a 100th chance, I continued, is that second chances are given out of love. 100th chances are given out of desperation. You are not here for love. You are here for financial desperation. Nyomi slumped onto the sofa as if my words had been physical blows. You're right, she murmured in a broken voice. You're absolutely right. We are terrible hypocrites. We are selfish. We are everything you say we are. Her admission of guilt might have been moving if it hadn't been accompanied by the obvious expectation that acknowledging her mistakes would automatically result in my forgiveness, and, more importantly, my financial help. Acknowledging your mistakes is only the first step, Nyomi. I explained with the patience of a teacher explaining basic concepts to a slow student. The second step is accepting the consequences of those mistakes. And the consequences of abandoning your mother for 12 years don't disappear just because you need money now. I went to the kitchen and started making coffee. Not because I wanted to prolong this visit, but because I needed a moment to process the surrealism of the situation. After so many years dreaming of this reunion, the reality was much colder and more calculated than I had imagined. While the coffee was brewing, I could hear urgent whispers between Nyomi and Malik in the living room. I couldn't make out the exact words, but the tone was clearly one of strategy and negotiation. They were recalibrating their approach, looking for new angles of manipulation. I returned with a tray containing a single cup of coffee. I sat in my favorite armchair and drank slowly, observing them like a scientist studying specimens in a laboratory. "Aren't you going to offer us coffee?" Malik asked, clearly irritated by my lack of traditional hospitality. "No," I replied simply. "This is not a social visit. This is a negotiation, and in negotiations, hospitality implies equal positions. We are not in equal positions." Nyomi seemed genuinely hurt by my coldness, but Malik showed an expression of reluctant respect, as if he were finally understanding that the woman in front of him was not the same one they had abandoned 12 years ago. "All right," Malik said, adopting a more direct tone. "Let's talk clearly. We need $100,000 to save the house and start over. We know you have money. We know we're family. What do you need to hear to help us?" His question was so transactional, so devoid of genuine emotion that it almost made me laugh. He had reduced 12 years of family abandonment to a simple business negotiation. What magic words did he need to say to access my money? "What I need to hear," I replied after a long sip of coffee, "is the truth about why you really excluded me from your lives, not sugar-coated versions about youthful mistakes or external influences. The real truth." Nyomi and Malik exchanged significant glances. It was clear they had prepared several versions of their story, but none had included the brutal honesty I was demanding. "The truth," Nyomi murmured, "is that Malik convinced me that you were problematic for our marriage." "Problematic how?" I pressed, not allowing her to hide behind euphemisms. Malik took the floor, probably realizing that Nyomi's victim strategy wasn't working. "I thought you were too present, too opinionated. I thought you interfered in our decisions as a couple." "Interfered how?" I continued to press, determined to extract the whole truth. "You always had suggestions on how to raise children, how to manage finances, and where to live. These were all points of contention." Malik admitted his failings with a brutal honesty that likely came at a physical cost. "And Nyomi always listened to you. She always valued your opinion over mine." The stark truth laid bare. Malik viewed my maternal influence as a direct threat to his absolute control over Nyomi. He couldn't abide the idea of his wife possessing an independent source of wisdom and support, separate from him. "So, you eliminated me because I represented an alternative voice in Nyomi's life?" I summarized. "You cut me out because my unconditional love for my daughter threatened your need to be her sole source of validation and guidance." The ensuing silence confirmed my assessment. Nyomi finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, yet reflecting a dawning comprehension. "Mom, now I understand that Malik was wrong. I understand that I need your voice in my life. I understand that I made the biggest mistake of my existence by choosing to please him over honoring our relationship." Her words felt genuine, yet they arrived 12 years too late, and within a deeply inappropriate context. It's easy to acknowledge mistakes when the consequences of those mistakes are financially ruinous. "You understand now that you need my voice in your life." I repeated her words slowly, deliberately emphasizing each syllable. "But you specifically need my voice to say yes to a $100,000 loan." Nyomi winced at the surgical precision of my observation. Malik, however, seemed irritated by my refusal to accept their carefully crafted narrative of remorse. "Annabelle, enough with the psychological games," he finally exploded, his true personality surfacing for the first time that afternoon. "We get it, you're angry. We made mistakes, but we're here now asking for help, willing to make amends. What more do you want?" His outburst was precisely what I had anticipated. The moment the mask of vulnerability would crumble, revealing the controlling, manipulative man he had always been. The same man who had convinced Nyomi that a mother's love was a threat to her marriage. "What I want, Malik, is something you will never be able to give me," I replied, maintaining a calm demeanor that stood in stark contrast to his agitation. "I want 12 years of my life back. I want to have known my grandchildren since they were babies. I want to have been present for their first steps, their first words, their first days of school." I rose from my armchair and walked to a bookshelf where I kept the few family photographs I had salvaged from my past life. I selected one in particular, Nyomi at 5 years old, beaming toothlessly, clinging to my leg with pure adoration in her eyes. "This little girl loved me unconditionally," I stated, showing them the photograph. "This little girl called me her best friend, her hero, her favorite person in the whole world. What happened to this little girl, Nyomi?" Nyomi gazed at the photograph, her expression etched with such profound pain that I momentarily feared she might faint. "That little girl grew up and became a weak woman who allowed an insecure man to destroy the most valuable thing she had in her life." Her answer surprised me with its brutal honesty. It was the first time all afternoon she had demonstrated a true understanding of the magnitude of her loss, not just what she needed to remedy her current predicament. "Exactly," I confirmed, returning the photograph to its place. "And now that weak woman comes seeking the mother she abandoned, not because she has found her strength and her independent voice, but because she needs money." Malik abruptly stood, clearly frustrated by the conversation's trajectory. "You know what, Zariah? Maybe you were right from the beginning. Maybe you are too dramatic, too complicated. Maybe it was for the best that we got away from all this emotional drama." His words were an unexpected gift. After hours of calculated manipulation, he had finally revealed his true nature, confirming every suspicion I had harbored for years. "There he is," I said, smiling genuinely for the first time that afternoon. "There's the real man. The man who convinced Nyomi that maternal love was emotional drama. The man who couldn't tolerate his wife having an independent source of support." Nyomi stared at Malik with growing horror, as if finally witnessing something that had been plainly visible for years but which she had steadfastly refused to acknowledge. "Malik," she whispered, her voice trembling, "do you really think my mom is being dramatic for being hurt after we abandoned her for 12 years? "Nyomi, don't let her manipulate you again," Malik retorted, adopting the paternalistic tone he had likely used to control her throughout their relationship. "She's playing with your emotions to make you feel guilty." "No," Nyomi declared, displaying a firmness unseen all afternoon. "She's not playing with my emotions. She's expressing the legitimate pain that we caused her. She's being honest about the consequences of our terrible actions." I observed this exchange with the detached interest of a spectator watching a familiar play unfold. It was fascinating to witness how financial desperation had begun to fracture the power dynamic Malik had so meticulously cultivated over the years. "Nyomi," I said softly, "do you realize that even now, in this moment of crisis, your husband is more concerned with controlling your reaction than with repairing the damage he inflicted on me?" Nyomi turned to look at Malik with newfound perception, as if seeing a stranger. "You're right," she murmured. "Even now he's more concerned with being right than with doing the right thing." "Nyomi, don't get confused," Malik insisted. But his voice had lost the confident authority it had maintained for years. "We need to focus on solving our problems, not on relitigating the past." "Your problems," I repeated, emphasizing the deliberate choice of words. "Malik, your financial problems are not my problems. Your bankruptcy is not my responsibility. Your inability to maintain a successful business is not something I should solve. A tense silence filled the room as my words sank into the reality of the situation. Nyomi appeared to be experiencing a delayed awakening, while Malik visibly struggled to formulate new manipulative strategies. Besides, I continued, even if I decided to help you financially, what guarantee would I have that you wouldn't disappear from my life again once your problems are solved? Nyomi opened her mouth to object, but closed it when she realized she had no convincing response. The truth was there was no guarantee, and everyone in the room knew it. During these 3 months living here, I continued, I have developed a beautiful and peaceful routine. I wake up when I want. I eat what I please. I watch the sunsets from my terrace. I read books I always wanted to read. I help other women who have gone through experiences similar to mine. I approach the window again, watching the waves rhythmically crash against the rocks. I have discovered that peace of mind is priceless. I have learned that chosen solitude is infinitely superior to toxic company. Mom, Nyomi said from behind me, her voice barely a whisper. What do I have to do to earn your forgiveness? What do I have to do to win back your love? I turned to face her, seeing in her eyes a desperation that transcended the financial crisis. For the first time, she seemed to grasp that she had lost something far more valuable than money or possessions. Nyomi, I said with a profound sadness I hadn't anticipated feeling. My forgiveness is not for sale and my love was never lost. The problem is that you turned our relationship into a business transaction the day you decided I was only valuable when I was useful to you. Malik, sensing his loss of control, launched a final desperate attempt. Zariah, if you don't help us, the children are going to suffer. They're going to lose their home. They're going to have to change schools. They're going to live in poverty. Can you really sleep peacefully knowing that your own grandchildren are suffering? His final appeal was his trump card, reserved for the 11th hour, guilt concerning the well-being of the children. It was a calculated strategy to strike the most sensitive chord in any grandmother's heart. Malik, I replied with a serenity that surprised even me, the children are going to suffer because of the irresponsible decisions of their parents, not because of my refusal to rescue them from the consequences of those decisions. You created this crisis, didn't you? Not me. Nyomi wept again. But this time her tears seemed to stem from a deeper understanding of what she had truly lost over all these years. The children are going to suffer, I continued, each word hanging heavy in the air like a final judgment. But they are going to suffer the consequences of having parents who prioritize pride over family love, who chose control over connection, who considered money more important than relationships. Nyomi completely collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing with an intensity that would have broken my heart years ago. But the heart beating in my chest now had been tempered in the crucible of 12 years of abandonment and had emerged stronger, wiser, more discerning. Mom, she whispered through her tears. What can I do? Tell me, what can I do to fix this? Nyomi, I replied with a deep but calm sadness. Some things in life can't be fixed. Some decisions have permanent consequences. You decided that I wasn't valuable enough to keep in your lives when everything was going well. You can't expect me to now consider you valuable enough to rescue you when everything is going wrong. Malik rose with abrupt movements, his frustration finally erupting into pure anger. You know what, Zariah? You're right. You were a mistake from the beginning. You were a constant interference in our marriage. Nyomi is better off without your drama, without your constant need for attention, without your emotional manipulation. His words were a final clarifying gift. After hours of masks and manipulation, he had finally revealed his true essence. A man so insecure that he needed to isolate his wife from all sources of love and support to feel powerful. Thank you, Malik, I said with a genuine smile. Thank you for confirming exactly who you are, and why I made the right decision by not helping you. Nyomi looked at her husband with an expression of horror and belated understanding. Malik, did you really just call my mother's legitimate pain drama? Did you really just confirm that you manipulated me to push her away? Nyomi, don't let her confuse you with her mind games, Malik insisted. But his voice had lost all its authority. We need that money. We need to save our family. Our family, I repeated, moving towards the front door, was destroyed 12 years ago when you decided that a loving mother-in-law was more dangerous than emotional bankruptcy. Now you are reaping what you sowed. Nyomi stood, unsteady, following me to the door with hesitant steps. Mom, please. I swear if you help us now, everything will be different. I will be different. I will set boundaries with Malik. I will defend our relationship. Nyomi, I said, placing my hand on the doorknob. You are promising to be different under extreme financial pressure. You are promising changes you haven't managed to make in 12 years of marriage. Why should I believe that this crisis will magically turn you into better people? Malik approached, adopting a more aggressive posture. Zariah, you're going to regret this decision. We're going to tell the whole town how you abandoned your own family in their time of need. We're going to make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are. His threat was so predictable it almost made me laugh. It was the last desperate gambit of a manipulator who had lost all his power. The threat of destroying my social reputation. Malik, I replied with a calm that visibly disarmed him. The town already knows exactly what kind of mother I am. They know that for 12 years I worked to the point of exhaustion selling desserts to survive. They know I never spoke ill of you despite your abandonment. They know I maintained my dignity even in poverty. I opened the door wide, letting the sea breeze fill my home with fresh, purifying air. What they are going to discover now is what kind of children and son-in-law you are. They are going to discover how you treated a loving mother for 12 years, and how you only showed up at her door when you needed money. Nyomi paused at the threshold, turning to look at me one last time. In her eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in years: respect. Respect mingled with pain, with regret, with a belated understanding of what she had lost. Mom, she murmured. I hope one day you can forgive us. I hope one day we can find a way to heal all this damage. Nyomi, I replied with a sadness that encompassed decades of pain. Forgiveness is not about forgetting the past. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. I have already freed myself. What you need is not my forgiveness. It's to learn to live with the consequences of your decisions. Malik departed first, clearly furious and defeated. Nyomi followed him slowly, glancing back several times as if she wanted to say something more, but the words never materialized. I watched them walk to their old, battered car, their small, insignificant figures silhouetted against the vast ocean. After 12 years, they had finally exited my life in the same manner they had entered it, seeking something for themselves without offering anything genuinely reciprocal. I closed the door gently and returned to my living room where the silence felt like a benediction. There were no shouts, no manipulation, no emotional turmoil, only peace. I poured myself a glass of white wine I had been saving for a special occasion and stepped out onto my terrace. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink that mirrored the calm waves. My phone rang. It was Aunt Zola. How did it go with the unexpected visitors? She asked with the wisdom of someone who had endured similar ordeals. Exactly as we expected, I replied, taking a sip of wine and feeling peace settle deep within my bones. They came for money, not for love. They confirmed everything we already knew about them. And how do you feel? I pondered her question as I watched a seagull soar gracefully over the waves. I feel free, Aunt Zola. I feel completely and utterly free. That night, after my call with Aunt Zola, I strolled along the beach under the stars, the cool sand between my toes, the rhythmic sound of the waves, the boundless expanse of the ocean stretching to the horizon. Everything reminded me that I had chosen a life of peace over a life of toxic family entanglements. In the following days, news of Nyomi and Malik's visit spread through town, as I had predicted, but the reactions were precisely the opposite of what Malik had anticipated. The ladies at the market expressed their support, many sharing similar stories of children who only reappeared when they needed money. You did the right thing, Zariah, Mr. King from the bakery told me when I bought bread a week later. A mother who respects herself teaches her children to respect her, too. 2 months later, I received a text message from Nyomi. It was simple, devoid of manipulation, free of requests. Mom, I'm in therapy. I'm learning about toxic relationships and healthy boundaries. I hope that one day when I'm truly ready to be the daughter you deserve, you might consider getting to know me again. I love you. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I saved the message and continued with my new life. My mornings of gardening, my afternoons assisting other older women, my evenings in contemplative solitude. Perhaps one day Nyomi would truly discover her independent voice. Perhaps one day she would learn to establish healthy boundaries with Malik. Perhaps one day we could forge a relationship based on mutual respect instead of desperate need. But until that day, if it ever arrived, I would continue to live my full and dignified life, surrounded by the infinite ocean, a constant reminder that some currents are too powerful to alter, and that wisdom lies in learning to navigate calmer waters. The money had provided me with many things, but the most valuable was not the house or its luxuries. It was the ability to choose who deserved my time, my energy, and my love. And I had chosen wisely. If you enjoyed my story, please consider showing your support by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories like this. Thank you so much in advance. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments. I'm always eager to hear your perspectives. Oh, and let me know where you've heard this story before. If you'd like to hear more life stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Many more await you. Big hugs and see you next time.